Fenton. He's an investor and an economic advisor. Bruce is the founder and CEO of Atlantic Financial. He's placed over $5 billion in investments internationally. He's the president of the Bitcoin Association, which is an industry group focused on philanthropy, education, and advocacy for Bitcoin and related technology. And he serves as an advisor to large private equity firms and organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Please help me welcome Bruce Fenton.
Thanks, everybody. Great to be here. I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about a little bit about charity and philanthropy and emerging markets, and I'm going to also touch on regulation. I try and avoid that topic, but like the old movie says, it sucks me back in. We have this new news that I think cannot go unaddressed, so I will discuss the New York bit license. I have some strong opinions on that. But first of all, a more positive thing. Bitcoin's ability to change the world for the better. We are in really exciting times right now. The world is changing very, very rapidly. And whenever we've had an amazing new technology, it has had all kinds of effects throughout the world. This happened with the printing press. When the printing press came along, it changed governments. It contributed to the Renaissance. It changed medicine. It changed discoveries. It changed the whole world because of the way that information was able to be shared. The internet did the same thing. The internet enables us to have so much better access to information, things that we can simply search for and instantly increase our overall knowledge in a way that just wasn't possible before. We would have had to go down to a library and have information that wasn't as current. And that's changed the world. It's changed medicine, it's changed philanthropy, it's changed governments. Governments have fallen because of the internet, because of Twitter, because of social media. And that's a big deal. And like many of you, I believe that Bitcoin is just as big of a deal as the internet, that it is truly globally transformative technology that will have massive effect that we can barely even imagine right now. It will affect governments, it will affect the way that we do things. Not just Bitcoin, the currency, but also the blockchain technology and the ability to decentralize everything. That's a big deal. For philanthropy specifically, or for lifting people out of poverty, there's a lot of incredible potential. What Bitcoin enables is very quick and instant ability to make donations. And Jason King, with what he has done, feeding 100,000 homeless people, is a great example of that. Jason would not have been able to do that without Bitcoin. But because of Bitcoin, he's able to accept these donations very easily, very quickly, and do something that couldn't have been done. It does two other things. One, it enables people receiving it to not have to go through an anti-money laundering, know your customer compliance process. And it also enables money to move across borders, because many people in the places where they need help the most don't have currencies that really interact well with the rest of the global system. If you'll notice, when you go to the airport, there's usually only 20 currencies or so that they will accept changes for, and you don't see the poorest of the poor countries on those lists. Bitcoin, for the first time, the money that is on my phone is the same as billionaires who are in this space, very successful investors, people like Mark Andreessen, and the poorest of the poor people who have phones, and there are quite a few very, very poor people around the world who do actually have smartphones or SMS-capable phones, which could have Bitcoin. And for the first time ever, we're on the same financial platform. That's a big deal. And the third thing that it does, it enables the sort of crowdfunding type of concept that we've seen successful with Reddit in some ways, which isn't really crowdfunding, but the reason that Reddit is so successful with Bitcoin is because of this fast-moving space. People can vote thumbs up or thumbs down, and generally, good news, important news rises to the top, and junk is generally downvoted. And that concept is very important, this kind of collaborative community that wasn't possible without the internet. And we see it with Kiva, and Kickstarter is a great example where we can really ask and say, well, you know, do we need, in the future, do we need big, huge aid programs and government programs, or can we move to a model more like a Kickstarter, where people actually fund what is important to them, which makes people more interested in the funding. And we can take it even one step further and say, we have the technology right now. We don't need lots and lots of aid agencies and other groups in between. We can actually give money right to those in need, and we can have a platform like a Kickstarter for aid. And there are a few others, there's a few out there, and I'm definitely interested in either working to create one or working with somebody else who is creating one, where you can actually give directly. And I think that's the wave of the future. And I think that you know, some of the large philanthropy groups that I work with recognize that would be key. Another thing I'm going to touch on, and I'm going to leave plenty of time for questions, is the emerging world. The world is changing very, very rapidly. We have entire new cities where none existed before. I just got back from 90 days traveling internationally, mostly in the Middle East, with my wife, by the way, who it's her first Bitcoin event. So she is glad to be here, and she had the honor of taking care of a 1-year-old, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and 7-year-old on a 90-day trip to 10 countries, including most of the time in Saudi Arabia. So kudos to her. In that process, I travel a lot, and I see how quickly the world is changing. In the time that we have been stagnant in many of our cities here in America, we've had entire new cities created. 7 or so years ago, King Abdullah Economic City or Financial City in Riyadh didn't exist. Now it's a huge city. It's 170 buildings. Dubai, those of you who did not go to Dubai or went maybe 10 years ago, it's completely unrecognizable. 15 years ago, it was a postage stamp of a nothing dust storm town with, I think, a Meridian Hotel and 4 buildings. Now it is truly one of the greatest cities in the world. We're doing a conference in Dubai in December. If you Google Dubai Bitcoin Conference, you'll see the information on that. So I'd recommend coming and seeing firsthand. The tallest building in the world, islands the size of Manhattan, shaped like palm trees. All of this has happened instantly. Saudi Arabia has a university which has an endowment the size of Yale. It's one of the largest universities in the world. It has an entire self-contained city which is co-ed, and women can drive, and there's no particular dress code, and the things that you may think of when you think of Saudi Arabia are quite different there. And these things are happening. They're happening all over the world. And the emerging markets are emerging economically, but also emotionally. And they're looking at the way that the world is balanced and the way that the United States is and was. When I started in the investment business, the United States made up 50% of all publicly traded companies in the world. Now it's less than 25% and falling. We will never return to that level in our lifetime. The whole world would have to stop, and we'd have to double. We won't double, and the world won't stop. The people in India and Bangladesh and Saudi Arabia and Malaysia and China are not going to stop. And sadly, we're not going to double that quickly. So the world has changed. The balance of power has shifted. The economic situation of the world has changed. And with that comes the emotional emergence in the emerging markets, where they're saying, wait a minute, how much do we really need these guys? How much do we really need to pay attention to their rules and regulations and their dictates? And are we really that happy with the way the world looks? And a lot of them are reaching a point where they say those great immortal words that are really the truest form of freedom that I can think of. And it's something my 7-year-old has picked up, which I like, and that's the word nah. That's what Rosa Parks said. Nah, not moving to the back of the bus. That's what Martin Luther King said. That's what really many of the greatest people in history have said. And I'm really proud of my son when he says, nah, not gonna do that. Sometimes, as a parent, it might be something that I'm kind of directing, and I can be a bit of a statist in wanting my own way, but that's what the emerging markets are saying. The United States says, you've got to do this and this and this, and you've got to comply with this. And they're saying, nah. So you have this fellow in New York named Ben Lawsky. And the other day, I had one of my most popular tweets on Twitter. I said, here we have a man no one elected asking to create laws that no one wants for problems that don't exist. And that pretty much sums up Ben Lawsky. No one elected him. Remember in 3rd and 4th grade you learn, oh, how does law get made? Well, you elect people, and then you all discuss it, and they make a law for you, and then they vote on it, and it gets passed. Well, that's a lie. That's not the truth. Ben Lawsky was not elected by anyone. Generally, people did not ask for the law. It's pretty obvious who did ask for it, banks, who are excluded. So we talk about in this community, like, well, we've got to reach out to these guys. We've got to work with them. Why? How about instead we say, nah, not going to do it. And I don't, of course, say we, meaning me, because I would never say something like that because I would be arrested. So me as an American, of course I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about we as humans. We as people outside of America. Because of course, I don't have the free speech to say nah to Mr. Lawsky. I would never do that. As an upstanding financial professional with a 22-year clean record in the financial services industry, of course I'm supposed to say, great work. I commend the New York Department of Financial Services for their work in this BIT license. That's what I'm supposed to say. That's what some of my colleagues have said. And why do they say that? Is it because of his great competence? Is it because he knows math better than Vitalik? No, it's because he has the ability to put us in cages. And that is the only reason that he has any legitimacy and anyone pays any attention to him. Because of violence. Because he's a violent person who's threatening my friends. He's saying that my friends at blockchain, my friends who are innovating, and my friends who want to create a new altcoin are breaking the law, even if they're not in his state. An unelected person threatening violence against people for doing math. And we as a community are supposed to praise him and say, let's reach out. Let's be friends. He is not your friend. I've been in this industry for 22 years. I've dealt with these regulators. They are not your friend. They are seeking to further their own power and their own influence. And dare I say, they are corrupt. If you look up in the dictionary, I looked it up last night, corrupt says you use deceit to further your own goals. Well, let's examine this completely objectively. Mr. Lawsky says that he had no idea that Charlie Shrem, who had met with him once a week for a year, no idea that the day that he was supposed to appear at his hearing that he was sponsoring, that the day before he was going to be arrested. Does anyone believe that? Please raise your hand if you believe that to be the truth. I call it a lie. I say, Mr. Lawsky, you are lying. That is not true. And if you want to prove otherwise, give me a Freedom of Information Act that I have requested. Give me the records. Let the public see your email records and see if that's true. Will he take me up on that? No. We talk about ways to engage this person. I say we'd be better off not engaging. Again, not we as Americans, of course, because I have to comply with the laws. I don't want to lose my freedom. I'm talking about we as humans, the people outside who really don't care that much about an unelected bureaucrat from the state of New York. Deceit is when someone uses dishonesty to further their own goals. I don't think there's any doubt of that. Is it corrupt when you have banks creating rules which help themselves? There's no doubt that that's the case, that it is what has happened. So why are we reaching out and working so hard to work with someone who has proven themselves to be deceitful? People say, oh, let's write a letter. Let's respond in 45 days. Let's not. The Bitcoin Association wrote a letter. We had it signed by 600 people. And we sent it to it. Did we receive any response? Not so much as an email from an intern. They don't really want to engage. The Reddit AMA, the CNBC appearances are theater. They're theater designed to bring a politician more recognition so that he can run for higher office. Does anyone disagree with that? Does anyone really believe he's out to help the public? So if we, in this huge room, agree that this person has been deceitful and is not out for our best interest, why are we working so hard to engage? Why are we working so hard to engage somebody who does not have our best interest at heart? You see the comments on Reddit saying, well, I hope he considers this, and I hope he considers that. Here's a person who wrote a regulation that said Bitcoin businesses aren't allowed to own Bitcoin, but banks are. Do you really believe that that's a person who can be reasoned with? That is a corrupt, manipulative politician who is trying to further his own career at the expense of innovation and the expense of jobs. So, I hope that there's people who say nah. I hope there's people who say those immortal words of Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, and I hope that people simply ignore it. And I think that the technology is going to outpace the tyrants, because right now anyone can take a phone and create a Bitcoin business. You don't need to go by their rules and their incorporation and their system and say, I'm going to follow your rules and go into your system and buy in. You can just create a business on the cloud. Here it is. Create a new Bitcoin business that accepts and receives Bitcoin. Whenever you have a question about what legitimacy someone has, ask them where they get that legitimacy, why they have that authority, and when they tell you to do something, say, or else what? Or else what? In the case of these licenses, what they're saying is they will put people in jail for using math. Technology is illegal. They're essentially making technology illegal. These are the best and brightest minds, the people who backed companies like Facebook and created hundreds of thousands of jobs, believe that this is the future, that this will be the greatest driver. So the downside is pretty great, and I don't believe that there is public demand on the other side. And like I said, we've reached out, we've kind of played the game, and I've said at times the things that you're sort of supposed to say, and that my colleagues in this industry are often saying. But when I see absolute, complete, total disregard, and I see the community kind of surprised, it didn't surprise me at all. I've been doing this a long time. I've dealt with these people before. I think of the people in the Bitcoin community kind of like the old saying as the people around a poker table who don't know who the sucker is. The regulators are not our friends. I don't believe that we should engage them. I don't believe that we should reach out to them anymore, because they have proven themselves to be absolutely and completely against any sort of reason. They are corrupted, and they are co-opted by special interests that are directly opposed to job creation, innovation, and all of the great things that can come from this. So I'll go ahead and open it to questions now. Thank you. We have time for a couple. Yes?
So I was in the commodities industry. I was on the board of directors of America. We wanted to do the same thing, right? But unless you engage with the regulator, and unless you at least have an open door to politicians, they can legislate you out of business.
Yeah, the question is, can't they just legislate you out of business? And like I said, we've tried. We wrote a letter signed by 600 people that was completely and totally ignored. I tried everything from humor to formal letters to whatever. We were completely and totally ignored. And the community was ignored. Marco, who is here, you're not in the audience, are you, Marco? Marco wrote a great piece, very well thought out. He's an attorney, specialist in this space, wrote a very well thought out piece that I don't believe was read. If it was read, it was completely ignored. So we're reaching out. We can make all the great arguments in the world, like Marco did, And people are under the assumption that these regulators are going to say, oh, well, those are good points that Marco made. No, they're not. They don't care what Marco said. They care what the banks say, because the banks are the ones pushing this. And yeah, they can work to regulate you out of business, but maybe the better technique and the greatest change that we've seen from social advocacy in the world is when people stand up against unjust laws. Does anybody really believe that there's any legitimate reason that a Bitcoin business can't own Bitcoin? Please, we have a lot of people in this room. Please let me know, because I really want to hear the reasoning. Why a Bitcoin business can't own Bitcoin. Is there any other explanation for that other than corruption? You know? This is an unelected official, which is even more amazing, because we have, at least with elected officials, you have people have said that they want this person making these kind of decisions. The arrogance to be unelected and to do these kind of broad and extremely destructive things, it's very, very, very harmful. So I have a hard time. I mean, sure, I'd gladly meet him. Maybe if he sees this speech, he may not want to meet me, but he didn't want to meet me anyway. And the meetings that he has had, I mean, how many meetings has he had in the industry? Anybody here meet him? You know, he's working on this so hard. He had a hearing, which was a show, and it was a scam. And they purposely, there is no doubt in my mind that they purposely timed the arrest of Charlie Shrem, who, by the way, if he worked at HSBC, would not have ever been arrested by a SWAT team for suspicion of failure to file a suspicious activity report. Come on. HSBC laundered more money than all of Bitcoin on planet Earth multiplied by 10. So it was a show. They purposely timed it. And you know, if they think I'm wrong, call me out on it. I will publicly apologize. I will donate $100,000 to Sean's Outpost if they can come out and prove with a Freedom of Information request that they didn't time the arrest of Charlie Shrem. It's a lie. They're lying to us. And we are being played in a show. They timed the arrest of Charlie Shrem so that they could throw the hearings into disarray, so the Winklevoss brothers would be on the defensive, so Charlie wouldn't even show up because he wasn't there, and the foundation had to scramble to make a written statement. And everybody else who would have been on the pro-Bitcoin side was already pre-selected anyway, and they toned it down a little bit. And then they balanced it with people like Professor Williams. Mr. Bitcoin will for sure be at $10 by now. And I wonder, and I know a lot of the leaders in this industry who say public things like, oh, I really commend them. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of Mr. Lawsky.